many people are hesitant to want to transition to using a walker. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, walkers are for old people, they're not for me, or I'm not an old man, or I don't need it, or whatnot. When we're using a walker to help increase our independence, it's not limiting us. A lot of times people see it as a limiter, like something that they need to rely on, but really it's a tool to help you have the right posture, or to help you have the right balance, or to help you conserve your energy so you can walk further and do more. So I really like to try to think about walkers as a tool to help increase independence rather than seen as something stuck in front of you to take away your independence. There's so many different types and styles of walkers out there. These are just 3 basic common ones, and we'll talk about kind of why each one is good for a different reason. Walkers are one thing that people, they need it, or their family members think that they need it, and they go get it and they start using it, but they don't know exactly how to size it, how to position themselves with it. They form bad habits, and then by the time they really, really need it, they have these bad habits that make it not as safe to use as if we learned the right way at the beginning. I always kind of say I wish that walkers required like a driver's license, how you need to like take a class or do a test before using it, because then you'd be trained properly right from the get-go and we don't have to worry about it later. But
Absolutely.
this is just a standard front wheel walker. A lot of times people put tennis balls on the back or skis on the back to help it slide better. It's sturdy. It's not going to roll away from you too quickly because there's only 2 wheels. It can fold up pretty nicely. It gets pretty small. It's the basic standard. You just need, balance support or stability support to get from here to there, and you use that. One big thing for both of these, not so much this one, but we'll get to that. The proper way to find the right height for your walker is if you're standing up and you put your arms down by your sides and you're just like relaxing them straight down. Where your wrist level is where the top handle of the walker should be. And I see a lot of people adjust their walkers a lot higher, and they have them way too tall, but they always say, oh, but if it's lower, I'll be hunched over. But what really happens is people tend to walk with their walkers out too far in front of them, and then that's when they end up hunched over. But if their walker was a little lower, so that the handles are right at that wrist height, but you step close into the walker, your shoulders can be relaxed. They don't have to be hiked up or out to the sides, and your elbows bent, and you're kind of right there at the walker in a way that you can keep your weight on your feet. You're not leaning, putting your weight on your arms, and it's at that good height for you. So that's another, that's the most common thing about walkers that I see being used improperly, is just having them too high or too far out in front of you. So you really want to step in close to your walker. With this, you'd have your feet, in the walker, not way back here behind it. So that's a standard, that's a front wheel walker. This we call a rollator. It has the 4 wheels. It definitely rolls faster. It has the seat. It usually has a pouch, and it has the brakes. And the brakes are so important. You always want to lock your brakes whenever you're not walking. So let's say you're standing in line, lock the brakes. Let's say you want to reach for something on the floor or on the table way over there, you lock the brakes. Let's say you're transitioning from walking and you're about to sit down, you lock the brakes. And I get on people about this, and a lot of people think it's really silly, but at the beginning, maybe you don't need it because you're just walking and everything's fine. But eventually you might get to the point where you rely on the walker a little more for stability, and then you never know when you're going to need to grab it. And if the brakes aren't locked, it's not going to hold you up. It's just going to fly away. If you're talking to a friend and you just stop in the hall and then something happens where you get moved or startled or someone bumps something, if it's locked, it's going to be stable and you can hold on to it. If it's not locked, it's going to roll away. And that's the thing with the 4 wheels, is it does go quicker. So a lot of times if someone, let's say they're independent and they walk with no walker, but then they have a surgery. They'll start off with this front wheel walker because it's a little slower. Then they'll progress to the rollator. Then maybe they'll progress to a cane or to, walking without again. And maybe they stick with a walker, just depending on the situation. So this is really great when you like to walk longer distances, but maybe you get really tired because it does have that seat on it. But one thing that's super important is when you're using a rollator and you want to sit on the seat, one, you never, ever, ever, ever sit on it and have someone push you, or sit on it and scoot yourself. It says right on the walker, don't do that. But a lot of people do. So if you want to sit down, I would always recommend, if you're somewhere where there's a wall, like let's say you're walking down the hallway, push the walker up against the wall and then lock the brakes and then turn around and sit on it. Because then when you go to sit or you go to stand, it's not going to roll out from under you by you pushing down or back on it, because the wall is there to hold it in place. If you are outside and there's no wall and nothing to, push it up against, just make sure you lock those brakes. But it's always best to push it up against something if you can when you're going to go sit on it. If you keep things in your little pouch and you're going to lift up the seat and bend down to get the pouch, lock your brakes. Just always lock the brakes. This is an upright walker or a stand-up walker, and it is a little taller. This one also has a seat and a pouch and the four wheels and the brakes. So everything I talked about here is important for this as well. But it has these taller handles and these troughs, and this is for your forearms to rest. And so you would have it, rather than down by your wrist, if you bend your elbows, again, you don't want your shoulders hiked up, but you would want to sit your forearms in those troughs. And this helps people sometimes just stand more upright if they have a hard time with the other walker standing close to it. It just gives a different position. Some people like the stability more. It all depends on your situation, and this is really hard to tell which would be best for you without recommendation from a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, or someone who really knows what they're doing and can take a look at your situation. So if you're going walker shopping, I would take all those things into consideration and reach out for guidance if you can on really what would be the best style and type for you.